his business, her business, and not your business, and then how to win every argument with your spouse every time. Expectations that go unmet are like seeds of resentment that can grow like weeds in the garden of your relationship.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the ADHD Eavesdrop, where you can be a butterfly on the wall and listen in on my conversations. Today, we have David Kiwi with us, and I would just love to say that Kiwi is a great name, and he has a story that goes with it, and he's going to tell it to us. So I would like to welcome David Kiwi, co-founder of Kiwi Coaching, with 15 years of leadership experience from Navy ops to cybersecurity, and now helping couples thrive in life and business. David equips leaders and partners to find clarity, confidence, and connection. That is a wonderful mission to have in life. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So do tell us the Kiwi story, because I love that.
Yeah, I love the idea of this podcast too. We're talking about, like, imagine you're in a coffee shop and you're sitting there and you're just overhearing somebody's conversation. You're like, ooh, that's juicy. That's good.
Right.
My goal of the day is just to share some fun stories about my life, where I've been, what I've been through, and just hopefully give you a little bit of tidbits and a little bit of wisdom, something like stealing from a coffee shop in the conversation. So starting off with Kiwi, right? So my name is actually David Kiwimagi. Quite the last name. And when I was in the Navy, boot camp, day one, they're going around the room and they're like, John Smith, present. They get to my name and they're like, what the f-? I'm like, that's this guy. I knew exactly whose name they were reading. They stared at it. They looked at me, looked at my name, looked at me, looked at my name. And then the guy goes, you're going to be Kiwi for the rest of your career. And so I got called Kiwi. I got called Petty Officer Kiwi, and I worked my way up, and I just owned it to the point my wife even calls me Kiwi. And so our last name is Kiwimagi, but we're often referred to as the Kiwis, and that's how Kiwi Coaching got started.
I love that. So, like, with Kiwimagi, like, I think I would have felt a little spicy about them not picking Magi.
The Magi is cool, I'm not going to lie. My name is misspelled, actually. If you look up the original Estonian, my name is actually Kiwimagi with like a V.
Okay.
And that means stone hill or rock picker. I guess my ancestors were like the slaves of farmers. They would go through the fields and pick up the rocks so the farmer could plow. And then we'd pile those rocks into hills or fences. Thus, we were called the rock pickers. So we're really hardworking, not super bright people.
I
But
doubt the second part of that is true, but I'll go with the first one, I'm sure.
we are very hardworking. That is the truth. We'll work ourselves to death. But Kiwimagi with a V can be spelled Kivi or Kivvi. Well, I have a feeling that George Kiwimagi, which is my ancestor about 6 generations ago, when they came over, you know how a lot of people's names got changed. I think those V's got turned into a W. And so when they got turned into a W, we became the Kiwis, and we've just owned it. So my name is very unique. If you Google it or you look it up, everyone who has that last name is related to me.
Awesome. There you go. So, David, tell me a little bit about what you do and you and your wife essentially do together too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Me and my wife, no one really, when they're young, you know, when you're like really little and like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, ooh, I want to grow up and I want to be a leader and relationship strategist. That's not exactly on the career path, right? Even in high school, you're like, yeah, no, I'm good. I want to be a keynote speaker. This is my goal in life, right? That said, that's obviously what I'm in now, and I love it. I love it. Me and my wife, when we started off, we didn't start off really good. We had a couple of rough bumps in the road, especially in the beginning of our marriage. And I got a couple of stories I'll share. This one's kind of a 4-part story, so we'll share it throughout the thing. But when we were first married, I asked my wife to make my favorite childhood meal, lasagna. And I love a good lasagna. My mom used to make it every year for my birthday. Well, I didn't set my wife up for success with that request because I had an expectation and she was now required to meet it and didn't know it. Well, she did. She made the lasagna. She set it down on the table in front of me in the kitchen, and oh, it smelled amazing. But as I peeked between the noodles, I had high hopes for this thing, but they were quickly shattered when I saw a hard-boiled egg staring back at me. I was like, what? I remember looking at it going, do I tell my wife, my brand new wife, who's glowing with pride, that her lasagna has just committed an unforgivable culinary crime? Or do I just eat it like a good husband? Well, I didn't know honestly what to say or how to say it, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I was really just afraid of her reaction. So I swallowed my pride, I swallowed my thoughts, and I swallowed the lasagna, but it did not taste good. It was awful. But that wasn't the first time in our marriage that we kept silent over things that we didn't know how to talk or communicate with each other about. It really came to a head, though, when we started a business together. Not the one we're in now, actually, a different one. And we invested like $30,000. It wasn't going well. And it got to the point where our marriage and our business were both headed for a cliff, and not in a good way. And so my wife came to me, she says, "We need coaching." And I was like, "We've already invested this much in the business. How much is coaching going to cost?" But I also knew something had to change. And so we sat down and we took the coaching. My initial impression was, this isn't therapy, right? Counseling, therapy, the coaching, this is different.
Very different.
It's totally different. I didn't know, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is completely different. This is awesome. But anyway, in 8 short weeks, when we took that coaching, we learned things about how to handle our ADHD, about who we are. We went through our Gallup strengths. And at the end of it, I began to see my wife in a whole new light. I saw her for who she was and the amazing skills and talents that she had that I was either taking advantage of or totally missing out on. And she started to see me the same way. And when we started to lean into who we are, the gifts that we have, and the capabilities we possess, like the superpower of ADHD, we began to have a complete breakthrough in both business and marriage. And so when we got done and we started working on our other business, my wife came to me and she's like, "Kiwi, we have to share these. We have to share these techniques, and we have to share this knowledge with other couples who are struggling in business. Like, this is a calling." And I totally agreed with her. I was like, yeah, we've got to share this. So Kiwi Coaching was born. And this is now where we go and we take people through and we help them learn about who they are naturally and what they're good at, and then show them how to embrace it. Like, you can know, hey, I have this desire, I have this passion, but until you embrace it and develop it into a true talent or skill, it's just a hobby. But when you lean into what you're passionate about, what you're good at, you explode and you give the world the best version of yourself.
Wow. So did you say both you and your wife have ADHD?
I guarantee it. We're undiagnosed and dangerous. I'm pretty sure I have OCD as well. I worked in sterile processing, which is like, you hand me a scalpel, hand them a scalpel, and you have to make sure that all those equipment work and there's no hairs or they're all sterile. I got really, really good at it. And I was really good at it when I was like, I think this is not natural to me. This attention to detail. Like, I got OCD here.
That's funny. So when you're working with couples, you're working with couples who have businesses together specifically, right?
We do. We mainly target and work with couples who have a business and they're trying to work on it together. We do work with a lot of people where, like, the husband has the job, like he's the CEO of the business and the wife isn't really involved, but he feels like he can't talk to her about the business. She feels like she doesn't know how to help him with the business. We also work with couples like that. We've also worked with a lot of, honestly, manager groups on how to better manage their employees, because relationships, whether it's a marriage with husband and wife or whether it's an employee and a manager, the relationship that you have in that, if you can take good care of that, the productivity and the profitability explodes.
So my husband and I both have ADHD. We are diagnosed and medicated, thank God.
I'm not, I'm dangerous. Probably should be.
And, we went through a lot of really tough marital times before we found out that we had ADHD. And then we worked on, figuring out who we were. And then a lot of things fell into place. But we also have a situation where I have a business and he has a business. So we don't have a business together, but I help him with his business sometimes. So there's a little formula for you because I've got anxiety and depression. So does he. I have OCD. He does not. We both have ADHD. And we both own businesses, and we're both retired from our careers.
Hey, you
So,
guys are super couples, man.
so what would you, if a person came to you with that situation and said, I don't know, I have no clue what the other person is doing and don't have time to think about it, and we're just busy doing our own thing.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, and especially when couples, they kind of have their own roles and their own things. And when they come to each other, they have these expectations. A lot of times, too, they're unspoken, where you have an unspoken expectation of somebody else. Well, I thought you were going to handle this. Well, I thought you were going to handle this. And those can feed into arguments. Unspoken expectations in a relationship can be like weeds of resentment that can grow if they're not taken care of. And so the first thing that we usually start with, and this is what we had to do with me and Alexis, right? One, we didn't know all the childhood trauma that we had and all the different things that we've been through, the anxiety and the depression, and we've been blessed. God has taken care of us, and we've gone a long way. But we had to sit down and we had to really talk about unspoken expectations. And they can be unrealistic. Sometimes they can be. So perfect example, I'm going to throw myself under the bus. I threw my wife's cooking under the bus. I'm going to throw myself under the bus now. My wife is an amazing cook, by the way. She'll make a 9x13 pan of enchiladas. I'll eat the whole thing. She makes lasagna. I won't touch it. So she is a good cook. It's just
Not with
that
the
dish.
eggs in there.
Not that dish. We don't touch that dish. But anyway, so when we were first married, and this has been a couple more years down the road, and when my son was born, my first son, my wife asked, she said, hey, I want to be a full-time mom. Can we figure this out in the budget? So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'll work a little harder and we'll figure it out. So I'm working all day. She's at home with the kids. So when I got home from work, I get up to the front door, I stick the key in, I go to open the door. I kind of assumed, I had an unspoken expectation that she's home all day. So the house should be clean. And dinner should be made because that's the culture I grew up in. Dad shows up, dinner's made. This is how this goes, right? And so I expected to walk in, meet with my wife, have some dinner, spend some time with my son, put him to bed, watch a movie with her or whatever, kind of have an evening, right? Well, I open the door and reality hits. I'm stepping over landmines of activities that had occurred throughout the day, passing the artistry of crayon on the wall, and I find my wife in the kitchen, and dinner is not on the counter. In fact, breakfast dishes still are. And my wife is sitting on the floor with an exhausted look on her face, and the baby is strapped to her chest. And so I asked the good husbandly question. So what'd you do all day? I am still alive. I am still here.
Gosh, how are you still here? At least you didn't say what's for dinner. Because if it had been what's for dinner, I'd have taken you out.
I've asked that question too, I'm sure. But I used to ask that a lot. And my wife finally had it with me. She's like, you can't ask that. Did you not see all the stuff we did today? And then the mailman came and then this and this. I'm just like, right? I'm like, oh, sorry. I just wanted food. Right? Maybe I'll bring home food next time. Unspoken expectations sometimes can be unrealistic, but unspoken expectations that go unmet are like seeds of resentment that can grow like weeds in the garden of your relationship. So one of the things that we learned with couples, whether you work together, whether you don't work together, you still work together in some capacity, whether it's in the home or with the kids, or like in your case, you guys work 2 different businesses and you help each other out occasionally. There's an exercise that we learned. It's very simple, and it's best done over food. Unspoken expectations are usually unspoken because we don't want to speak them. So what you're going to do is you're going to write them down. So here's the exercise. You get 3 pieces of paper. On each piece of paper at the top, you write your name, your spouse's name, and then both. And then I highly recommend picking a category. So like household, right? So you live in the same household. We have shared responsibilities. We'll go through that. So in the household category, me and my wife did this exercise. And this is not a once and done. We actually do this about once a quarter. And we sit down and I said, okay, I don't mind doing the dishes. So I wrote dishes on Kiwi's piece of paper. I've never gotten the mail in my life. In fact, I don't even know if we have a mailbox. So I write, get the mail on my wife's piece of paper. Well, I hate laundry. So I wrote laundry on my wife's piece of paper. And so you go through this exercise and you get all the way done. No peeking, no cheating. You write out your own expectations of each other. And then when you're done, you compare notes. Here's the key and why this works is because an unspoken expectation, when you try to talk about it in the moment where it's unmet, emotions are high. Tension is high, and it's not a good time to have a discussion about it. But when you do it outside of that moment, when you sit down, especially over food, over a dinner or something like that, or even coffee, and you do this exercise, now you can see what you have expectations of each other. And you're going to find you don't align. The longer you've been married, you tend to be closer. Newlyweds are really fun to do this with because they are like opposites.
Right.
But for example, I don't like the laundry, so I put laundry on my wife's to-do list. Well, she don't like the laundry either, so she put it on mine. So, well, now we're outside of the moment of the laundry piling up and nobody has clean underwear, right? We sit down and we say, okay, cool. Let's turn this unspoken expectation into agreement. What can we do together? How can we work on this problem together? Well, it turns out for us, we put it in the both category. My wife collects the laundry and she is home all day. She washes and folds it and puts it on the floor in the bedroom. When I get home, I fold it and put it away. So I don't have to worry about cycles and getting things taken care of, but she doesn't have to worry about all the effort it goes into folding and putting it away when she's got 3 kids now running around the house. And this works very well for us. It's a very good system that we do very well. And so sometimes the system works a little bit, but needs to be tweaked. That's why you do the exercise again. But when any couple that can sit down and talk about unspoken expectations, whether it's in business or whether it's in the marriage or whether it's in homeschooling your kids, which is something we also do, you get that opportunity to actually turn them into agreements. And when you can do that, you can work through any.
So I want to take that a step further and talk about how the the unspoken expectation for people with ADHD who have rejection sensitive dysphoria. And so the unspoken expectation is that everything that you say is going to be a criticism.
Oh my gosh, ain't that the truth? It is. It's like we write the story in our head about how this is going to occur. And then we're like, I don't want to do it because I've already written the story. And that really leads into his business, her business, and not your business. And then how to win every argument with your spouse every time. But when you have that, I'll be honest, my wife was like that. She's not here. I wish she was here actually to share this with me. But
Yeah,
my
I
wife,
wish she was there too.
we try to do podcasts together, but again, we homeschool 3 kids, so
Right.
it's hard sometimes. So, but anyway, my wife grew up in a home where she totally had ADHD, and she got shut down hard a lot to the point anytime she voiced a concern that she had or some things that she was struggling with in school because of that, she got shut down. Try harder and do this. So to the point for the several years in our marriage, she didn't bring any problems to me because she thought I would just shut them down too. And as I began to learn more about her, when I learned about her strengths, I learned about her past, and I started to work through these things, I realized, okay, when you bring something to me, I'm going to stop, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to seek to understand, not just to respond. And when I started doing that, she opened up a whole lot more. And just opening up allowed her to realize that I'm head over heels in love with this woman, like so in love with this woman that I'll do anything for her. And when she mentions stuff like that, she's like, I really struggle with this, or I really feel like you're going to shut me down. So I immediately go, okay, one, even if I disagree with you, I'm never going to shut you down right off the bat because you've shared that with me. And when you have a partner that's really understanding and really works with you, got to go from there. But here's my thoughts on that. You will never get the answer you want if you don't even try.
Yes, absolutely. The old Michael Jordan thing, I've missed more shots than I've
Yeah. And when you when you do it, that's what I love about coaching now is that brings out stuff a lot. My wife says, I make so many people cry. I'm like, that's good tears though. She's like, I don't like making people cry. I was like, you make people heal is what you do. You help them heal. But when you have a coach that comes in and kind of guides you through that process, you go, oh, okay, I can work through this. And it's just beautiful.
So when you work with couples, do you have couples that come to you sometimes and say, well, my husband has ADHD or my wife has ADHD or, both of them have it and it's causing all kinds of troubles. Do you have couples that you work with that have that as well as the other issues?
Yes. Oh, hands down. I have a lot of friends that have ADHD. Some are diagnosed, some are medicated. A lot of us are not. We're just dangerous. I have a guy at work, actually. We send each other ADHD reels because we just find it funny. But talking about ADHD, right? And I'll share a little bit about his business, her business, and not your business. And this helped me a lot focus on what I can control. I have an insane ability to hyperfocus. Really, really hyperfocus. So when I was in boot camp, they do this dumb thing. It's dumb. Where they just yell at you for no reason. This is what they do. And so they'll be like, read your book. And so you go read your book. And they're like, make your bed. And then you go make your bed. And then you didn't hear them yell, read your book again. And so now you're making your bed. And like, why aren't you reading your book? You told me to make my bed. And it was insane. It was insane to the point I caught on. It's not about what you're telling me to do. It's about what you're telling me to do right now. About following orders without question and just doing what you're told. Well, my ADHD, my hyperfocus kicked in. And I was like, I am really good and really fast at focusing on something. So I'm going to take this as a challenge. You're giving us like 30 seconds between switching up and giving commands. So like, go make your bed, make your bed, go read your book, go read your book. And I'm reading my book and I know they're going to say, go make your bed. And so like, go make your bed. I slam the book closed. I run over to the bed. Now I had worked in the hospital for years and I knew how to make a really good bed because I'd made beds for years. I made that bed in 28 seconds flat. And they're like, go read your book. And then I go read my book. And while we're all reading our books, they're going around, your bed's not made. Your bed's not made. Kiwi, your
Bed's made.
and he comes up to me. He's like, how'd you do that? And I was like, petty officer, I had a good teacher, petty officer. And he's like, that's right. Your abilities are superpowers. And when you lean into them and target them correctly, you can. But here's the key. You cannot control everything around you. Sometimes you feel like you need to, or sometimes you feel like you want to. But this thing that we learned called his business, her business, and not your business. This changed everything for me, especially. His business, her business, and not your business has also been taught as the circle of influence, or your business, their business, and God's business. So let's break it down. Your business is what you think, do, feel, and create. You have full control over these things. You have control over your thoughts, control over your actions, control over what the environment that you create. But you are responsible, which means response-able in all of those categories. You have full control there. What you don't have full control of is their business, what they think, do, feel, and create. And when I explained this to one of our coaching clients, she literally made this sound. She's like, and I was like, are you okay? It's like, whoa, what was that light bulb moment, right?
What happened?
Yeah, I'm like, what happened? She goes, 99% of my anxiety are because I'm constantly going around and making sure my husband feels good. And I was like, you can't control his feelings, but you can control the environment you create. So I gave her a challenge. I said, this week, instead of going, how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? And just don't even ask. I want you to focus on creating an environment that you know your husband feels good in, an environment that you know he feels loved in. Focus on the environment you can create and not his feelings. She comes to us a week later and she's like, oh, it was so beautiful. He came to me and he's like, I don't know what you're doing, but I feel so loved by you. I feel so taken care of. You're just incredible. Thank you. Because she stopped focusing on what she couldn't control and she focused on what she could. And when you lean into, I'm just focusing on this and creating an environment where my clients can feel nurtured, where I can get stuff done and I can work with my spouse. When you focus on that, you have full control. And when you have full control, especially someone who doesn't like things out of control, this is me, I like to have control. When you focus on what you can control, your anxiety way lowers.
Mm-hmm.
And then last but not least is God's business, or not your business. Think of like a hurricane. We used to live in Florida and we get hurricanes. And the weather guy doesn't even know where it's going. Like, nobody knows, really. Once it makes landfall, then they have an idea of where it's going. But you can sit there and watch the news and stress out about it. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. That's just going to cause you anxiety. But when you focus on what you can control, you can create an evacuation plan. You can go do and get the water that you need just in case the power goes out. You can check in on your neighbors. You can be kind to your kids. You say, here's the plan. We're going to grandma's house if this happens. And when you do that, you have full control of your area of control. And your life is so much better off. When I started doing that and I started focusing on that and then using my superpower of being able to hyper focus on each of these areas, I felt so in control of my life, and life wasn't just happening to me. I was making my life go in the direction I wanted.
Yeah, when I talk in my coaching, we talk about the circle of control. And you have the inner circle, which is you, and then your influence, like what you can influence, and then what is completely out of your control. And when we really start to look at, we start picking away, because like they always want to put a lot of things into the influence category. Well, I can influence this and I can influence that. I can't control this. And then when you really start picking apart the influence circle, you have to start moving everything out into the no control, because really there's very little that you have control over except for you.
Yeah. I love that. I teach this to managers too, actually. I just did a workshop with a security operations center, and I was teaching this to about 6 managers. And I said, are you responsible for your employees getting the job done? They were all like, yes, I'm responsible. I was like, no, you're not. You have zero control there. I said, but you are responsible for creating an environment where they can get the work done. Do they know what's expected of them and how to do it? Have they had the proper training? Do they have the proper time and resources to do it? And I said, most importantly, too, Are you creating an environment where they feel safe to fail? Because if they feel safe to fail, they'll try new things. If they try new things, they'll come up with better ways of doing it. So back off the micromanagement, work on creating a safe environment for them, and watch your productivity and profitability explode. And they were like, no. I worked with this group for about 6 months. The SOC director called me in for it. SOC director, after 6 months, comes to me and he's like, those 4 teams that you worked with in particular for 6 months, he's like, they are the most productive in the entire organization. I don't know what you did, but I was like, yeah, but you want more. Okay, let's go.
Let's talk. I got
Yeah,
more.
let's do it. We'll do it because it's the truth. You're absolutely, I love the influence part too, because we think like, oh, I can influence my wife's feelings because I know how to push her buttons. What you're doing is you're creating an environment where your wife gets stressed. You're not really making her feel stressed because, and I learned this, I know I'm getting way off, but I was reading a book and I can't remember the life of me, this name of this book, but it was about a guy who survived the Holocaust. But his family said he was one of the most happy people they knew. Because while he was in an environment that he literally couldn't control, nothing, everything was outside his control, he learned I can control my thoughts and I can control how I react in my environment. And I choose to be thankful for what I have and have gratitude for that I'm still alive. Even though he lost his wife, his kids, his parents, I mean, he lost everything. And he, of course, restarted a family when he got out. But I was just sitting there thinking, if someone in that circumstance can learn to have control over their thoughts and control over what they create with their life, the rest of us are so blessed. Why can't we do it? Because your thoughts will become your actions. Your actions will become your habits. Your habits will become your character, and your character will shape your destiny. You want a better future? Let's think about what we're thinking today.
Have you practiced that?
Many times. That's actually one of my keynote speaks that or keynote speeches that I share called "You Are Diamond."
And like that rolled off his tongue beautifully.
I love doing this. I love podcasts. I love sharing stories, and I try to drop. I call it shenanigans laced with wisdom. Like, this is what I do.
There you go. That's kind of, that's kind of my philosophy too. I have some shenanigans on my podcast.
Yeah, yours is fun. I was like, I like this lady. I got to meet her.
I have been a large proponent of humor my entire life. I advocate for the use of humor in most things. And so I think you do too as well. And so I'm wondering, do you use humor when you work with your coaching clients and teach them how to use humor?
Yes, humor. And one of the things I teach a lot of people public speaking too, because when you are in business, being able to present yourself, whether it's an elevator pitch, a keynote speech, a sales pitch, to be able to present yourself in a way that people hear you, understand you, but also fall in love with you. Humor actually releases dopamine. And when someone releases dopamine, they chemically become attracted to your speech and what you're saying. And so humor is huge. I've gotten in trouble with humor though. I'm rabbit trail this for a second.
You
Where
have
I use
ADHD?
humor
Of course
so
you have.
yes, oh my gosh, I use humor so much. There are places where it's not appropriate, like a funeral.
Have you
So
ever burst out laughing in a funeral?
multiple times.
I came very, very close at my grandfather's funeral. The woman was singing and it just struck me as hilarious. And I was like having the worst time not laughing.
That's hard. Me and my wife are actually not allowed to sit next to each other in funerals because we kind of have that same kind of dark sense of humor. And we'll like, peanut gallery it. And then we start giggling and everyone's like, what's wrong with you two?
Oh my gosh. So this is completely off topic, but this is what I love about this show.
Yeah,
I have
please.
a funeral story for you.
Oh, I love it. Tell me more. Tell me more. I want to hear.
So my cousins and I always get in trouble for misbehaving in church or at funerals because we just do. And so we were trying to behave and we were all in the first 2 rows at my grandma's funeral and they did the the wafers and wine.
Yeah. Okay. Communion.
Communion, yes. So they were doing communion and as they're doing communion, my cousins and I are all sitting here and we all see this ladybug on the floor in front of the communion line. And we're watching people walk and none of us realize that the other people are looking at it until a woman steps on it. The first 2 rows of us, we just went, and we busted out laughing. And then the minister gave us a dirty look.
I'm sure. Hey, I think it's funny too, because talking about humor, we're rabbit trailed. Let's just run with it. But in the Bible too, I was reading up this passage, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was talking about in one gospel, it says two disciples were running to Jesus's tomb, and one of them outran the other. But in another gospel, it literally calls out Peter. It's like two disciples went running to the tomb, but Peter was super slow, and I beat him. And I can imagine the disciples sitting around later. Peter's going, "You call me out in your gospel?" John's they're like, "Well, yeah, you're slow."
How dare you?
Like that is the most like, and because it's in like old English sometimes too, when you read the Bible, it's always funny because it's like, wait a minute, that's a diss. It's a polite diss, but it's a
Yeah,
diss.
yeah. Another one who's famous for that is Shakespeare. He throws little
Oh
things
yeah.
in there too. You're like, what? Wait, I caught that.
Speaking of getting in trouble, though,
Yeah.
to run on that and kind of reel it back in a little if I can. Speaking of getting in trouble, I've done some dumb things in my life, trust me. But one of the dumbest things I did was actually with lasagna. So talking about that lasagna again.
You and lasagna.
Oh, it's true. Hard-boiled eggs and lasagna, a recipe for marriage success. I'm just saying. That's actually a good title. I'm gonna stick with that one. That literally just rolled off my head. Anyway, I'm at work. This is probably 5-7 years later, somewhere like that. And I'm talking with my boss at work about our favorite meal. And I'm like, oh man, I love a good lasagna. And he's like, oh, bro, my wife makes a good lasagna. I'll have her make you some and you can take it home to your wife. All I could think was, oh God, please don't. I'm like, you know what trouble I'm gonna be in?
Lasagna's made. I'm gonna eat this right in front of you. Delicious.
Well, the next day, I show up to work, and in the break room fridge is a 9x13 pan of lasagna with kiwi written right across the top of it. And I thought to myself, do I leave it here and disappoint my boss? Or do I take it home and probably start one of the biggest fights with my wife? But I also thought, this will probably be the first time in my marriage I've had good lasagna. It's the truth. My wife tried like 5 or 6 different recipes over the years we've been married, and none of them were good. They were awful. I did not like a single one of them. And so I took it home. I put it in the fridge. I didn't tell my wife. She found it, of course. She's got the fridge open. And she's like, what's this? She talks just like that. And I'm like, food. She opens it up. She knows what it is. She's like, where'd you get it? My boss's wife. I will never forget the words she said next. And this is where the story ends because the fight was not appropriate for audio audiences. She says, couldn't get it from your wife. So had to get it from another man's wife. Huh. And boom, explosion. By the way, I ate that and it was good.
You're like, it was worth it. It was worth every bite.
I don't know if it was worth it, but it was good. But one of the things that we've learned in our marriage is how to win every argument every time. This works whether you're an employee and a manager, or whether this works whether you're a spouse or a couple in business or not. And we were taught this in our coaching, and it goes like this. In marriage, in an argument, we assume someone has to lose. If we get into a fight, someone has to back down. Someone has to cave. Someone just has to give up and let us win because it's a boxing match. There's another misconception called happy wife, happy life. The truth is, especially from my experience, that just leads to a disgruntled husband. Happy marriage, happy life. I know that doesn't rhyme, but that's more truthful. So how do you win every argument every time? Well, if you think about it, when you first get married, right, and you're holding your spouse's hands and you're looking into their eyes and you're like, I love you, right? And I'll take on the world with you, sickness and health, rich or poor, but then kids come along. Then you start a business together. And then the mother-in-law visits. And now you're the problem. No, you're the problem. No, you're just like your mom. That's how it goes, right? But back at the beginning, if you think about that mentality of it's you and me versus the problem. We're going to take this on together. And so the mentality shifts. So here's what you do. And my wife actually told me today, she says, I have to tell this differently now. She says, what you do in an argument is you go, okay, hang on. Sorry. I'm sorry. I know I'm arguing. I really love you and I want to work on this together. It's you and me versus the problem. I don't know what the real problem is here, but I'd love to talk about it with you. Now, sometimes in an argument, you're already super high. Emotions are really high. You say, I want to talk about this with you. Can we take a 5-minute break? And then let's come back. And my wife was like, and if you're a wife and he's not listening, just say it again, but take your clothes off. It's like, yeah, fair enough. It'll work. But don't do that if you're a manager and employee. But picture this as a manager and employee, though. The employee's like, I want a raise. The manager's like, you need to cut costs. So they go into the conference room and they have a convo. How does that go, right? Well, here's the truth. Let's think about it for a second. What if the employee and the manager both said, okay, it's you and me versus the problem? What's the real problem there? Well, the real problem is the company's not as profitable. Because if the company was more profitable, the employee could have a raise and the manager wouldn't have to stress about cutting costs so much. So they said, okay, well, how do we come together and let's work on a plan to make the company more profitable? And now you're united against the problem. And when you do that, when you have that mentality of friendly fire, same team, let's figure this out together. That level of maturity it's a mindset of maturity. When you can do that, and sometimes it is, I'm sorry, my ADHD is showing. Sorry, my OCD went crazy. Your mother-in-law brought it out in me or whatever. But you sit down and say, I want to work on this with you. And a couple that can work on any problem and have any argument and come out the other side both winning because you conquered the problem together. Every piece of conflict, you don't shy away from it anymore. You embrace it. You're like, okay, cool. We're iron sharpens iron here. We're going to figure this out. Let's do it together. Here's the most beautiful part. 99% of all arguments from the people that I have worked with are from one of two things. One, an unspoken expectation. Or two, you are not within your circle of influence. You're not in your business.
There you go. Well, David, this has been a great conversation.
Thanks.
It really has. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I hope, I don't always ask, but I'm thinking that maybe we could do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will leave you with this. I'll wrap it up for you and put a nice little bow on it. After 10 years of marriage, we had been married over 10 years at this point, my wife finally swallowed her pride and she went to my mom. She's sitting across the table from my mom and she says, what is this recipe that Kiwi loves? Can I have your lasagna recipe, please? Because I do want to make it for him. I love him, but I don't know what it is and I can't seem to make it right. My mom looked at her shocked, surprised, and shrugged her shoulders and went, what recipe? I always bought it frozen from
Dopers.
Exactly. Apparently, I like cheap lasagna, and my wife was making the delicacy stuff.
Yes. Man, I made lasagna for a long time, and then I discovered Stouffer's, and I've never looked back.
It just works. So no matter what you've argued at in life, no matter whether it's an ADHD thing or an OCD thing or a past trauma, you'd be surprised that when you really come together to work together, it can be something as simple as you fought over lasagna for a decade, and now it's one of your funniest stories.
There you go. Well, thank you, David. I appreciate your time. And for our butterflies on the wall who are listening in, I hope they've enjoyed our content and our conversation. And if they have, we want them to like, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and come back next time. So with that, we'll see you next time.